how you react to people, especially when you're in the real estate game, dealing with any element of government. And I'm not saying that politically or otherwise. It's just when you're dealing with the building department, permitting, zoning, anything like that, insurance adjusters, whatever it may be, anybody that has some sort of impact on your asset or what you're doing in your asset, how you deal with them can absolutely make or break the deal. I've learned over the years that by being very fair, staying incredibly calm, firm, but fair with people, and asking good questions and just doing everything in my power to I never raise my voice. You will not see me get excited and yell and carry on. I don't send nasty worded emails. I don't swear in person to anybody or anything like that. I go out of my way to make sure I'm peace, love, and happiness. You'd think I'm a big furry bunny. And
well, you got the fur, and you got the squishy fuzziness of you, like this sort of like soft, but you're just missing the ears. I'm just saying, you're just missing the ears.
But it does work. They say you get more bees with honey, and you absolutely do.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter.
I am excited to have you here today. And yes, I use the word excited every single show, so deal with it. I've got Taylor. How do you say your last name?
Tyler Sheff, S-H-E-F-F, Sheff.
Tyler Sheff, and it's an S-H, not a C, everybody. So if you're looking him up, it is Tyler Sheff, S-H-E-F-F, and he is absolutely the guy of the cash flow guys. I am excited that I got him here today on my show. I know nothing about him, so I'm going to be learning right along with you. But what he's already said that works and rocks it for me is he is interested in trying to make other people's lives work better. And as you know, that's what we try to do on this show. Our focus is about bringing together a community. How you take care of your network is how you grow your net worth. Not just that you have a network, but how you interact with it, your integrity, your character, and your brand, which supports you in this market, is what truly makes you a successful investor in this long-term marathon process called investing in real estate. As you guys know, I've invested for 35 years, so I'm obviously very attached to the marathon of investing in real estate. So let me read Tyler's bio here, and then we can let him start talking for himself. All right, hold on. First, let me share the screen because I like you guys to know this guy is real. So let me share his right here. Cash flow guys, learn to earn. So Tyler Sheff is licensed Florida realtor with Future Home Realty located in Key West, Florida. Tyler and his team are highly skilled in acquisitions, ground team recruitment, and management in the Key West market service area. Having over 2 decades of experience in the real estate space as property manager, realtor, home flipper, apartment building owner, owner of a mortgage debt instruments. Yes, guys, he's done a lot of things in residential. You can get a feel for it. Tyler has the skills needed to secure value-added opportunities across several asset classes. In recent years, Tyler and his wife, Jill, have shattered traditional short-term and long-term performance standards and own some of the most profitable rental properties in the state of Florida. Additionally, Tyler and his team are well known for creating some of the most profitable real estate opportunities known in the industry today. With over 20 years of investing experience in various market cycles, Tyler's conservative underwriting style means that all opportunities arrive well vetted and stress tested to ensure solid performance that is certain to exceed expectations. Also, Tyler is known worldwide as the host of the very popular Cash Flow Guys podcast. Tyler's proven experience with a vast network of industry-leading professionals at his side and comes well respected in the real estate investing industry as an ethical, highly effective educator and mentor, often sought after for his unique ability to solve real estate-related problems, which we will talk about. Tyler's skills are ever so important in developing practical investment opportunities. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It is good to have you here. So I always like to start with, how'd you get into real estate? Explain this to me.
Well, you could say to some degree, I was born into it.
Okay.
My mother was a real estate broker, and I grew up with watching her back in the day in the 70s running around. And it's interesting. I tell the story, and it's kind of cool. There was a time, for those of you that maybe weren't conducting business back in the 80s, that interest rates went through the ceiling. and they went into the very high teens, low 20s.
Yes.
And so today people tend to look at, when you hear seller financing, some people think scam, they run for the hills, whatever it may be, or you don't want to pitch it. And I don't want to go too far off on left field, but back then that was the norm. That's just the way you did business, because you certainly weren't going to a bank and borrowing money to buy a house at 20%. So I remember as a little boy, my mom used to take me with her to closings, and my job was to carry the suitcase. And by suitcase, I literally mean a suitcase of cash for her clients.
Wow.
That's how it all got started. And, you know, a little kid, I'm 8, 10 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a lot of money in that suitcase.
What are they doing that has that much money flowing through it?
Right.
That's got to be like,
So up until I was a teenager, probably before it kicked in, I thought that's what my mom made. I was like, my mom's rich. I just never said anything out loud. I thought that was her paycheck. Right. I'm like, Mom, she gets to bring suitcases of cash. And I thought the title company was the bank. I thought that's what she was doing, is making deposits. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
So that kind of put the bug in my ear, watching that process and thinking that mom's getting suitcases of cash. I laugh about it now, but I was pretty serious back then. I thought that was the deal.
Oh no, I understand. I took my daughter to one of my flips, right? And it's like, oh yeah, here I showed it to her before and I showed it to her after. And she's like, Mom, this is beautiful. And then she's like, Mom, I'm so mad at you. You buy these nice houses and then we don't live in them. I don't understand this.
What are you doing? Why are you getting rid of it?
Exactly. Why are you getting rid of them? I don't understand.
Right. For me, it didn't, watching her do it. And I got in my 20s and went my own way, did my thing, joined the Army, traveled the world, did all that, had a great time, got out of the Army, did my tour, got out of the Army. Now what's next? So in the Army, I was military police, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be a cop, right? Because that's the natural transition.
Right. It is. Yeah. And
when I got out of the Army, it was right in the time where it was real tough to get a job as a police officer. So I took a pause on that and started looking. I got into sales, working at a car dealership. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I got the job was, well, number one, I couldn't sell. I didn't know how to sell.
I was going to say, police officer and car sailor don't, they're not next door to each other in my mind.
Exactly. So I couldn't stomach being a car salesman. It just wasn't my thing. But I had read in a book somewhere that a basic core value or core thing you can learn is to be able to sell. Well, I did sales for just a few months, and I just couldn't. I'm not the kind of guy that can sell you garbage. So I switched over to the service department, and I did really well in the service department as a service manager.
Right.
And I still got to keep the demo. And that was the whole reason I got the job in the first place, because my car broke down and I didn't have the money to buy a new one. And they give you a free car if you're management. So it's like, well, how hard could that be? So I enjoyed the sales process, and I enjoyed the car dealership. And then I went to another dealership for more money. And there comes the dishonesty again. They were into some pretty big stuff that I would consider criminal fraud, taking advantage of people when their cars broke down. This is a big Ford dealer in Florida. Okay. So I didn't want any part of that. Decided to go ahead and team up with Mom. Mom was well off in her career. She had an established client base. I started working with her at the same time. I opened a trucking business that I ran for many years, where I was a freight broker. Okay. But that was initially how the real estate thing kicked in, was working with Mom, because I wanted to shift gears, but I still wanted to be in some sort of a commission type thing. Okay. And then it grew from there.
Yeah, because you can do, if you're already doing if you're a freight broker and therefore you're looking to add something to it, you really don't want something that's 9 to 5.
Right.
But if you're a real estate agent, then you're actually very capable of cultivating a schedule.
That's right. And I became that assistant for her, right? I was running paperwork, and you can do that stuff at night and on the weekends. And that's how it started out.
Were you still carrying suitcases of cash? I just have to ask. I'm sorry.
No, they that all went away. Interest rates came back down to reality.
Yeah, right, exactly. And now you're able to just do a regular transaction with maybe a traditional loan attached versus a seller financing or these cash down payments or something. I just had to ask because it's such a funny part of the story. So that's how you got back into it. Was it basically you were helping her?
That's right.
So when did it turn into, I'm going to own real estate either for me or as an investment vehicle of some kind?
So I met, I was trying to generate my own business along with helping my mom, and she encouraged me to do that. And I tripped over a couple of investors, and what they would do is they would buy these houses and they would fix them up and they would sell them for more money. And that was cool because they bought lots of houses, and I was new to the whole house flipping game. And this is going back, I'm dating myself here, but this is like, oh my goodness, year 2000. But I'm attending these closings. So I'm selling them houses. And then in a few months, I'm attending another closing. So I'm getting paid twice. It's great. But I'm looking at their check and my check, and it was like, there's a big difference here. And I don't recall even seeing them get their hands dirty. What's going on? So naturally, how hard could this be? I started saving up these commissions.
Okay. We hopefully have a story about how hard this could be. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a story for that.
Okay,
we have a story for that. So I started flipping houses and it worked really well. I teamed up with some other guys, friends of mine, that one guy was the money partner. And the other guy was a contractor. And of course I was the one finding the deals, putting them together and then selling them when we were done. And that worked really well. We did that for about 2 years. And man, we got some real volume going and we had a system going and we had the same paint colors and the supplies and it was great. Everything is rolling until it didn't. And I guess there's always that story, right? And I definitely have that story, but that's really where it got me to that point right there.
You know, it's funny is years ago I was doing, well, this conversation happened years ago, but I still do hard money lending and I lend to flippers, right? But I also would get notes through brokers as well, right? And so I was talking to one of the note brokers who they do not loan to flippers. They loan specifically either to second residences or second position or primary residences of some kind. And that's what they did in the day. And I was like, well, why don't you guys loan to flippers? And he's like, because there's always the end of the line. There's always the point where you have that flip at the time when the market moves on you or the time when that region moves on you or the time. He's like, I don't want that one. I don't want my clients' money in something that will eventually, even if I have a long history, even if they've done 12 of them with me or 25 or 200, there's a point where it turns. And he was conservative enough where he went, I don't want to be in that at that moment. So he just didn't do that inside of his business model. Right. And so you're like, it works until it didn't.
Doesn't, right.
And it's not even necessarily you. Right.
No,
I mean, it's not like you make a huge mistake or something. It's, you know,
no.
it's talk to me.
It was third party. It was completely out of control. I mean, out of my control. It just happened. If you want, I'll tell you the story.
Yeah, sure. Love stories.
You'll love this one. So we got the 3 partners. Everything's going great. We've done, I don't know, a couple dozen houses by this point. We got money in the bank. Everything's great. We've sold off the assets. We've got profits left. We're reinvesting our own money. We're not using bank money. We're just flipping houses off of profits earned, which is the ultimate scenario, right?
It's awesome because you're just taking cash and building more cash on it, right? So it's compounding faster.
That's right. And I found this great, beautiful Victorian, big 3,000 square foot house in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it was on the market at, I think it went on at 35,000. This is back in 2004 or 2005, I believe it was. And it was a complete train wreck. And I remember showing up to the thing, and this is before they had the internet. For those of you younger folks listening, you actually had to get out and get in the car and go somewhere. The MLS was a book that they printed out, and I was a realtor, so I had first access to it, and it was released, I believe it was once a week or once a month. I don't remember specifically, but I was there flipping pages because that's what you did. There was a big 3-ring binder that had all the listings in it. And the broker would walk down the hall. It was like this somber moment where everybody would wait in anticipation. And he dropped the pile on there, and there was this house. It just printed off. It was in that purple ink. Remember when we were kids and you got the test in the purple ink? That's how they did it.
Yes, I do remember. That was a while ago, but I think
yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So I see this property. I grab the thing and I just jump in the car and I drive across town. And I get to the door. There's 23 people in the front yard.
35,000 for a property that's a big Victorian. It's like, okay. I mean, there are 2 things that go off in my head. One is, ooh, opportunity. And the other is, oh, what's the problem?
Exactly.
Because there's always a problem with the opportunity.
This one was extra scary. This one was one of the ones that played the scary music as you pull up for the whole theatrical. It was like Hollywood in your car. It was awesome. So most people would just step their head, and the lady opened the door, the real estate agent opened the door and let people peek in. And everybody else was like, oh my gosh. And there was some homeowners there and people that wanted to buy and move in. They're going to make it look pretty. And they opened the door and smelled it. And they were like, whoa, boy. But to me, that's the smell of, and you're a flipper, of opportunity, right? It's like, oh, that's not that bad.
There's this is an opportunity and there's a problem. It's not that there's not a problem. My question is it a problem I can deal with in my skill set?
Right.
That's the question, right?
Exactly.
We bring a level of expertise, which you do, and we'll get to that even more. You bring a level of expertise that allows you to rock it in a particular skill set. right? And so like I had a friend of mine who bought it in foundations. So if it was red tagged for foundation, he was all over it. Not me.
Right.
I didn't do foundations. So,
Either.
right, so it smelled bad, which meant
Yep.
it was potentially in your skill set.
Yep. It was ugly, but it was fixable, right? We can throw money at anything and fix it. So I wound up getting the deal for 50 grand. I literally negotiated the deal with the listing broker. I negotiated face to face with another buyer in front of the listing broker until the other person backed up or just basically walked away. I got it for 50 grand. Still a screaming deal. To this day, it's still a screaming deal. But everything went fine. Bought it, right? No problem. Peel the carpets out, do the tear out. Everything's going great. This is a huge Victorian home. The talk about foundation. It was built on hand cut 36-inch by 24-inch mahogany beams. And it used to be the mayor of the city of St. Pete's house. He built it. It was an estate house that overlooked a farm before there was a city of St. Petersburg. It's crazy. Beautiful place.
Right.
Anything you can imagine. So everything's going great. Off we go to the races. Everything's fine. It even had a swimming pool. One day, my partner calls me and he says, hey, I need you to go to Home Depot and pick up some paint for the property. I'm like, okay, it's on will call. All right. You just use the debit card. Okay. And the three of us had debit cards where we buy our materials. No credit involved in this thing. We didn't pay. We paid for it cash. We were not using hard money, anything. I go to Home Depot to buy, I don't know, a couple $100 worth of paint, and it's declined. It's like, well, that's interesting because we have a couple $100,000 sitting in there. How could it be declined?
Oh, ow, that hurts me.
Yeah.
That hurts me. Just hearing the story, I'm hurting.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
So I'm obviously embarrassed, and I call my partner, who's the money guy, right? He's the one that originally funded the thing. So we let him take control of the money because he funded originally, although he's been paid back. Everybody had to have the role. That was his role. He's like, there's no way. It must be something wrong with the security. So he calls the bank and he says, we have a serious problem. Meet me at the bank. I'm like, uh-oh. We go to call the third partner, goes to voicemail. That's interesting. Well, inadvertently, the two of them were together when they opened the account, and Paul managed to fancy himself when Steve had excused himself onto the paperwork for
as a signer of the account.
Yeah, as a signer. And he decided to help himself to all of the company's money, every bit of it, and then proceeded to leave town. And he was English. He was from UK, so he wasn't even a citizen. He left town. I mean, when I say left town, I meant to England.
Lily left. Yeah. Left England. I got that. He left England. Yep.
Yeah. So initially it's like, okay, let's just take a deep breath. Let's solve this situation. But so we immediately like, okay, how do we get our money back? Step one, call an attorney, call several attorneys. Cheapest thing we could come up with, because it was international, was about $15,000 a retainer. Well, we had that, but Paul now has it. So that's a problem. This guy, I probably shouldn't mention his name, but whatever. So he's gone, money's gone. We don't have $15,000. Long story short, the next day I get a call from one of our subcontractors. He says, there's a red tag on the front door. I'm like, what do you mean? So I call the city, which I had a good relationship with the city of St. Petersburg. We've always got along great. I find out that on the way out, he called the city and ratted himself out for being an unlicensed contractor. He provided us fake contractor license documentation. When he pulled the permits, he pulled the permits as a homeowner, not as a contractor.
Right, as a homeowner, right.
Right. He also took the materials that he did buy with our money, or that he took basically the materials he got from us, used them on other people's jobs, and then also shafted a whole bunch of other people in town too. So the guy's gone, right? No money, no nothing. And the other partner and I are like, well,
why did he? I don't want to interrupt your story. Finish your story. I'll hold my question. Go ahead.
Well, he had basically managed to get 7 figures out of all the different partnerships he had worked around town, and then skipped the country with it.
Right.
And catching him was now become almost impossible. So it's like, okay, let's just do damage control. Thank goodness we don't have investors in this. It's just us. Let's figure it out, because we got to finish this house, right? We've got this open project.
You got to get a hard money loan. You got to figure out the cash flow. You got to figure out the payments. You got to develop a history with somebody you don't have a history with as far as financing. Yeah.
So lesson number 1 is, don't ever hire an unlicensed contractor, knowingly or otherwise, to do any work on any house if there's permits, because your permits then become invalid. And that's what happened. The city said, we understand your situation. However, we're going to have to cancel your permits and issue a stop work order. It's like, okay. And by the way, we're going to have to do an inspection now to determine that the property is structurally sound. It's like, oh boy. And they did. They came over and forced us to open the walls. And they found one 2x4 in the corner that was basically the whole support for the corner of the house. Everything else had been eaten up by termites. So what kept us in one piece, I'll be honest with you, is at this point was taking a deep breath, not reacting emotionally, although it was incredibly difficult to do. But every time we spoke to each other, and we were great friends, or to anyone at the city, we just took a deep breath and we took it in. And it's almost awkward having a conversation with the city when they say something terrible and you're just like, I understand. And then I would step outside, take a deep breath, try not to pass out, and walk back in and work it out. So in the end, we were able to get them to allow us to restart work about 6 months later. And that meant they scrutinized us to no end. We had to, forward. Yeah. Then they came back and said the whole back of the house, the one building inspector left, and another one got fired apparently, and another one replaced him. And that guy apparently had something to prove. He showed up one day and said, you need to tear off this whole back end of this house.
Oh, come on, dude.
This is a 900 square foot room. Yeah. This is one big grand room. It's a great room. That's 900 square foot. And you want me to cut that off of my 3,000 square foot house? That's not going to work.
Is there a way to permit it? Is there why? What's the problem? Why does it need to be removed? Let's come up with a creative solution.
Yeah.
Right.
He claims that it was not a permitted addition. I'm like, okay, then show me when it was added. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you have to prove first that it wasn't built with a house. Mm-hmm. So he went back to his, well, he couldn't prove it. And I also went back and said, the house was built in 1870 something, as far as we figured out. And the county it was in didn't exist back then. It was a whole different county. And those records were lost in a fire in 1920, which is why the build date on the deed to this property is 1920, because that's the date that they started the property. So you can't say it wasn't ever here, but that process took a month and a half. And that took me sitting down in a library and reading case law and trying to be my own attorney, because we didn't have any money to do it. And of course, I'm a realtor. My other guy's an electrician, and he's out twisting wires and doing electrician stuff to make enough money to go home and feed his family. Whatever's left over, bought paint and drywall and in lumber. And my job was the same. I'd sell a house. I'd go to closing and go, okay, Ramian is this much and water, and I need drywall and paint. And we made it. It took us a long time. We literally rebuilt this house, just the two of us, pretty much by ourselves. It took us an entire year to do it. And yeah, it was, but I'll tell you what, I come away from that. I am one heck of a drywaller. I can hang drywall and do plaster work like there's no tomorrow. I am probably the most qualified. You ever need a plaster guy? Well, I charge a lot more money these days, let me tell you. But
because hanging drywall is a skill. It is an art, and it is a skill. It is not something you just want to, like, yeah. Oh my God. I can just imagine it getting better as you go through the living room, like each wall, like, oh yeah, okay, that's, now I got it perfect. Okay, now let's redo this first wall.
Yeah, by the fourth bedroom, and I had it nailed.
Yeah, exactly. It goes exactly like this every time.
Exactly.
OMG. And so you actually sold the property, but now you've got 35 into it, right? Because that's the purchase. You've got a year worth of holding costs into it. You've got permitting, right? Into it. Fines, right? Yep. That we're not even counting time and effort. We're just counting pure like cost. And now you've got all the materials. Mm-hmm. There's no labor because you guys did labor. So at least it saved you on that. So in the end result, was it a net loss or a net gain for you guys?
If you don't give us any credit for labor, we broke even.
For labor. Huh?
We broke even if we don't take $1 for labor.
Beautiful. Okay. Right. I personally, given the situation, I'm going to call that a win.
Yeah.
Right. Because you put in the right. Because like I said, before we turned on the video, dear audience, I said, look, one of the cornerstones of real estate is your education. Yes. And your network. I will say that over and over and over and over again. but the experience that you get and the problem solving skills that you can create or that you earn through doing real estate, right? And so you apply determination, if nothing else, just raw sheer determination, and clearly some drywall skills along the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Not a lot scares me anymore.
Right. So what you learn from it, right? So that's why I call it a break even. I'm like, break even is a success.
Exactly. How you react to people, especially when you're in the real estate game, dealing with any element of government. And it doesn't, I'm not saying that politically or otherwise. It's just when you're dealing with the building department, permitting, zoning, anything like that, insurance adjusters, whatever it may be, anybody that has some sort of impact on your asset or what you're doing in your asset, how you deal with them can absolutely make or break the deal. I've learned over the years that by being very fair, staying incredibly calm, firm, but fair with people, and asking good questions and just doing everything in my power to I never raise my voice. You will not see me get excited and yell and carry on. I don't send nasty worded emails. I don't swear in person to anybody or anything like that. I go out of my way to make sure I'm peace, love, and happiness. You'd think I'm a big furry bunny. And
well, you got the fur, and you got the squishy fuzziness of
right,
you, just
right.
like this sort of like soft, but you're just missing the ears. I'm just saying,
right.
You're just missing the ears.
But it does work. They say you get more bees with honey, and you absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does work. And this industry will absolutely challenge you. I mean, that's, that's the reoccurring, like I try to talk to, like, yeah, you'll make a lot of money in this, and you might have that first awesome deal where you pull 20,000 or 100,000 out of a flip or out of a property of some kind, and it all goes your way. And you're like, oh man, I could do 20 of these, and then you get to deal 6 and you're like, okay, this is freaking hard. Deal 6 is the learning curve, right?
Yeah.
Or deal 19 or deal whatever. There's a guy in our community called Bruce Norris, who, a lot of us respect Bruce Norris and his point of view. His company has done over 2,000 flips and does hard money lending and stuff like that in the industry. So he's kind of well known. And somebody asked him at one of his seminars one day, like, out of all the escrows you've done, how many times do you enter a problem? And he says, all of them, like out of every 20 escrows or so. He's like, yeah, that's good. Okay. He says, yeah, it's thought for me. He went, probably about 19 out of 20. There's something wrong. There's a challenge.
And number 20, you're looking at it with a fine tooth comb going, okay, where are you? I know you're in there somewhere. Call the title company, get them on the phone.
Yeah, for some reason, this is working. I don't know what to tell you.
I want to see the title commitment. There's something wrong.
There's something wrong here. Right, let's read through it. Hold on a second. I could have sworn I read this and I didn't see anything wrong the first time. Let's double. Yeah, every single time there is something. It really is about being able to problem solve and bring a level of personal determination or calm or creativity, right? Or whatever it is that is your way of interacting with the world that makes you successful.
These days I see people are afraid to ask questions. Maybe they feel that they'd sound stupid if they asked I ask dumb questions all day long, and I do that on purpose because you'd be amazed what you learn if you just ask the question.
Right.
I'm navigating Key West, Florida right now, the city government in Key West, Florida. And it's amazing what goes on. I love Key West. This is paradise on earth. I highly recommend it to anybody if you haven't been.
And we're gonna switch over to that in just a minute. Keep telling me the story. I just want to let you know I haven't forgotten that. Go ahead.
So I'll be sitting in like a city council meeting where they'll do something like they'll issue a permit for this project, this specific task, and then you go next door and the guy's behind the counter is like, we don't do that. I'm like, you do because you just did it right there. And he's like, no, we don't do it. Okay, why don't we do it? Being nice though, not that way. Probably it sounds a little quippish, but being nice in the city where I've got some properties right now, some short-term rentals, same thing. They have the reputation, the city where I have a lot of property at right now. That's rental property. My most profitable ones, actually. The investors in my community are scared of the city of Tarpon Springs. They think that you can't do anything there. They're just mean, nasty people, and you just can't deal with them. And I gotta tell you, I have no problem. But I just go there in person and I shake hands. I'm like, hey, so I want to do this. And they're like, you can't do that. Why can't I do that? Well, we don't know. Okay, well, can we look at it together and figure out why we can't do it? Because I got to explain it to somebody, other people in my world, why we can't do it, because I think I can. Okay, so if I can't do it, what happens if I do anyway? Where's the law you're going to charge me with? And I laugh, right? I'm serious, but I'm letting them think I'm laughing. And they see where you're going. And they're like, yeah, I guess this does sound stupid. Let's roll up our sleeves and figure this out together. I had just happened with the trash cans, literally. Owned a property for 5 years. I had to have tenants bring the short-term rental tenants bring the trash to the curb every week. Trying to hire someone to do just that task is interesting all itself.
Yes,
so I thought, here we go. I'll make a corral for the trash cans at the street, and I'll make it aesthetically pleasing and put beautiful plants around it. Nobody even know there's trash cans there except for the garbage guy.
Right.
Logical,
and all they have
right?
to do is then open it, because
Sure.
then the trash cans are available, and then they close it. Really easy.
No, city says no. I said, okay, well, let me come at it a different way. What if it was already there? Then what? She goes, well, we don't really have a way to enforce it. I'm like, oh, okay, good. It's already there. I went back and built it. There.
It's right there. Because there isn't one a code that said you couldn't.
Right.
And so unless there's a code that says you couldn't, you're actually very much abiding by the law, the way that is available.
Sure.
So let's double back to, because thank you for giving me your story, because of course that's part of the interview. I love that. Not that I'm not going to stop you from giving me another story, but let's double back to what are you doing today? Because you earned your chops. You've gone through a variety of successful and unsuccessful experiences in real estate. You've been able to grow yourself up, if that's what you want to call it, in this field. And now what are you doing today with that?
So today we packed up about a year and a half ago and moved to the Florida Keys. My wife and I have COVID hit. We were in our RV. We retired early, actually. We were done. We were traveling the country, living off our passive income. We got notes and buildings, and that's all great. Okay. And we got out to Lake Havasu and set up camp for a couple of weeks, and everything's great. Okay. And then COVID hits, and then they were running out of food, and they were going to shut down the state of California. And it was like, oh my goodness, this isn't cool.
I'm like, Lake Havasu, what are you doing in Lake Havasu from Florida? But okay, right? Go ahead. Like, that was a good trip.
We were going the whole country. We were full-time in our motorhome, and we decided to come home to Florida. Well, we thought, things are weird right now, so let's just go down to the Florida Keys because it's paradise and there's nobody there. So right now, because of COVID. So we went down there and loved it. We were up in the upper Keys and then moved down to Key West because it was always a dream for us moving to Key West. It's just paradise on earth. So today, I sit back and I've always been out at the tourist attractions in Key West and down at Duval Street in the district and sit in the bar, look at the street, people watch. You think, man, I wish I could own a rental property here. And I was the guy that used to say 20 years ago, I can't afford it, or that's too much money, or look at that price. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I never sat down and did the math to find out, no, it's really not ridiculous and that will work. And I can make a screaming fortune off of that, even though it sounds on the surface to be overpriced, because I learned how to diagnose problems and then put in the effort to figure out how to fix them. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, Key West, everything's $1 million. You cannot find a single family house that's move-in ready for under $1 million. It's a $1 million city. Population 26,000.
That would make me pause too. I'm like, yeah, because here in Southern California, anything that's $1 million or more is like, I may not be able to get positive cash flow on that. I really need to dig into the numbers. Right. And it's immediate pause for me. $1 million price tag. I'm like, yeah, that's not a good rental. Right. I start with that assumption.
Yeah. So then you see a duplex 1.5. And I'm thinking, wow. And so you ask around and say, well, what does it cost to rent a place? And they'll tell you, well, or you'll look at the listing and they'll say the rent right now is $2,000 a month. Well, okay, those numbers don't make sense. It brings in $4,000. It's a 1.5, not going to work. So I kept thinking about it, talking to more landlords, talking to tenants, trying to figure out what the problems were, right? And I was also talking to tourists, and I bumped into some guys that were down here, and they got fed up. They lived in New York City. They got fed up with all that's going on in New York City at the time. And they just decided, heck, we're remote workers. We're moving to Key West temporarily. They rented Airbnbs at the tune of, I think they were paying $12,500 a month for an Airbnb, for an apartment, for basically a 2-bedroom apartment at an Airbnb property. And I went, good gravy. And how's that working? They're like, well, our employers are supplementing it as well. And, we're high income individuals.
Right. And so we can get the size we want above and beyond what employers cover. So we can get what we wanted. We can have the nice experience we're looking for.
Exactly. So then I started seeing, it's one of those things, it's like The Secret. When you look at it enough, you start seeing it. You go, like when I bought a Jeep, and then suddenly I see Jeeps everywhere. I start seeing this opportunity, and I start seeing, Yahoo Finance is talking about the commercial real estate sector is suffering in New York City, and people are moving from New York City and all this stuff. I went, that's interesting. So the more I dug in, the more I found that everywhere else in the world, what I think is expensive rent here is cheap.
Cheap.
Is dirt cheap.
Yeah, it's cheap. It's cheap by New York standards in particular. It's cheap. They pay $20,000 for a condo.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
A month.
And I thought, well, if I just serve a different type of tenant, so if I buy this duplex, lease runs out, well, yeah, I'm sorry, lease running out, got to go. And that's the unfortunate side of it. But the other side of it is like, here's these folks that this is a dream for them. They've always wanted to relocate, live in paradise. They can afford it. And if I build the product or provide the product that they really want, now I'm not renting dumps, the plan is to buy and acquire small multifamily and dial them up very nice. And I don't mean lipstick on a pig. I mean quality. No,
yeah, it's got, you got to build it in so that it really is living in paradise. And you see the pictures and you go, oh, yes, that calls to me, right? In those Airbnb pictures, they feel it, they can get it, they can go, yes, that is the afternoon I want to have, is sitting on that deck, looking at that view, or being in that bed that looks all cushy and wonderful and bright and shiny. And you got to do it right.
That's right. And then it came down to, well, if I can just build this product, I have an untapped audience for this. People will come from all over the place for this. And I'm seeing it all over the city. They're doing it anyway. And because I talk to these people, I see them, you walk the streets of Key West and it's a quiet, sleepy little town. And you just strike up conversation with people. You see them sitting on the front porch having coffee and you're like, oh, I'm here from LA, or I'm here from Seattle or Dallas or whatever. Like, how long are you here for? Oh, a couple months. Cool. But you like living here? Yeah, but man, I had to get this place vacant and I had to go find furniture. And you can't imagine how hard it is to find furniture in Key West. There's one furniture store. The next one's in Miami, 200 miles away. So I thought, okay.
It's that way in Hawaii too. It's the same problem in Hawaii. One furniture store on each island.
If I can build it for them, furnished.
Yeah, here it is. Yep, here it is, dude. Come get it.
You can rent a couple months, you can rent a couple weeks, you can do whatever you need. And now in Key West, the cool thing about Key West specifically is the short-term rental industry is highly regulated. I know you're probably thinking, why is that cool? Well, because it makes people behave. And when people play by the rules, you get a better experience. And the rules are, you can't rent something for less than 28 days unless you have a transient license. And it costs $200,000 a year to buy one. Wow. The last one they issued was in 2012. So you got to buy one from a back alley from somebody. Yeah. It's challenging. So if you find a property that has one on it,
that adds $200,000 worth of value to it just there.
Yeah. And I found properties already we've designated, and we're getting ready to do our first capital raise, that they have the licensing. They're just not even using it. They don't even see the value.
See, that's perfect. That is ideal. I want to do that in California too. Can we get to California and let you do that here?
Right.
Literally, it's like small hotels or Airbnbs that have the transient licensing already, because getting hotel licensing can actually be very difficult and complicated and expensive, right? But if you're a mom and pop hotel and you already have it, you've already been issued it, and you're already licensed in the city, guess what? Exactly. So that's beautiful. I love that model.
Yeah. So we're excited.
Yeah, this is beautiful. So you're doing your first raise right now for this model. You have a property in mind, you've got targeted, or you're doing the raise in order for people to support it, and then you'll be able to target your property?
We're doing the latter. We're doing a fund. We felt that by doing a fund, we can capitalize on the best opportunities. You can
do multiples as well. Right. You can roll from one to another, and you can do multiples, and that way your hands aren't tied, and you can take an opportunity when it shows up at the time it shows up.
That's correct.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. As an investor, I am going to ask this question, and you're going to, don't reach through the camera and knock me out. But as an investor, are you offering, because I invest in syndicated deals, I invest in funds, right? And the beauty of a fund is it's evergreen. I actually have clients who say, hey, I don't want a syndication because it rolls over every 4 or 5 years and it's blah, blah, blah. I actually want a fund. I want the structure of a fund. So do you offer a preferred return to your investors, or are you offering a percentage?
It's a great question. We were really back and forth. Yeah.
It's a big question, right?
And actually, I'm happy to answer it, because we lamented back and forth. Should we do a preferred return? And you spend a lot of time when you're doing this in the beginning to figure out what's everybody else doing, what's everybody else doing? Yeah. I have a lot of friends in the multifamily industry, a lot of people that are syndicators full time. And I ask them and whatnot. And what I'm seeing, the industry is gravitating away from the preferred returns, especially when,
percentages.
Cap rates are compressed and whatnot. into percentages. And that's the route we decided to choose. And here's why. I feel that if we pickpocket up front, in other words, if the fund raises its money, goes out and buys things, and then we have to pay and share out preferred
returns on non-performing capital.
Right. Or underperforming capital, because these things take time, right? It takes time to
stabilize.
You own
it. You got to furnish it. You got to get it pictured. You got to get it mounted on Airbnb. You got to get good reviews before you can start charging full price. There's a life to it.
Yes, there is. And so we didn't want to pickpocket the fund, because eventually what happens is the investors wind up shortchanging themselves. Yeah. If you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, I'm not getting my preferred return. And a lot of the people that we work with are people that are using IRAs. And it's like, well, why is the preferred return really important to you? Well, because my buddy John says it is. Okay, is this retirement money or is this cash in your bank account?
Right.
Well, it's retirement
money. Are you living on it, or is it retirement? Yes, exactly.
Right. Do you need to get paid? Do you really got to get paid this year, or can you wait a year or two?
Right.
There are assets, I'll be honest with you, that if we are fortunate enough to bring them online and we get our deals get approved, that we can have them operational in a very short period of time, because they don't really need much except for systems change. I don't have to do any renovations, minor furnishings. It's all stuff I can do real simple. It's a change of how it earns money.
Oh yeah. It's because, yeah. Sorry. I'm excited because I had the same idea. I'm just not implementing it in California, but you're implementing it out in Key West in Florida, which is perfect, which is taking an existing asset that actually works relatively well, probably could have worked well as an existing Airbnb unit. And you're repositioning it as much through marketing and who you're targeting as much as the asset itself.
Yes.
Right. Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I buy a multi-unit and then I rehab the units. And then when I rehab the units, I can get more rent because I now have a washer and dryer in there. And I'm like, yeah, but you also, in adding the washer and dryer, you also are either consciously or unconsciously retargeting who your target market is. Because the people that will pay for a washer and dryer are a slightly different renter than the people who will accept the washer and dryer being down the hall.
That's right.
Right. And so you're actually creating a culture change inside of your unit. Creating that culture change actually creates value inside the property. This is a prime example of the culture change actually being the lead in the creating the value.
Exactly. And here's one we're working on. I'm not going to give an address because we're still working on it.
Okay, good. Yeah, don't give an address.
I'll tell you, it's a guest house in the city of Key West that has been operating as such for many, many years. I'm talking decades. It's only had two owners that on record that we know of. And it's technically operating illegally. It has a transient license, but it's only licensed for 2 out of the 6 units.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. And because, this is a bit of a Bubba network here in Key West, it's flying under the radar and nobody wants to tattle, which is fine. That's cool. I get it. But that when it changes owners, that's going to change. So
it'll get looked at.
Right. It's off market and they can't get it sold because nobody wants to touch it because it's not legal to run it as a short term or a nightly rental for all 6 units. So with our model, it's like, wait a minute, we already are really good at the short term nightly thing. We get that, no problem. We have those systems, and we have our new product,
which is longer than 28 days.
Right. And I can combine the 2 in the same building, because the other 4 units that I in fact turned my nose up. I sat with the seller. I'm like, I would love to put this together. I love the place. It's awesome. But I couldn't figure it out. And then it was like, boom, when I hit my new tenant class, I'm like, this is perfect for my new client. Now let's sit down. And I'm sitting down, seller direct, having these conversations. Let's work this out. And the same owner owns several other properties in Key West where the same problem exists. Now, this is a problem that I can solve, but the average buyer hasn't figured that part out yet, which I'm okay with.
Well, and I talked before about there's an opportunity, which means there's a problem embedded in the opportunity. And the question isn't whether there's a problem or not. There's always a problem. Sure. The question is, do you have the solution?
Right.
And
is it feasible?
Is it feasible?
Right.
And you just described your capacity to implement the solution. This property is probably a perfect example. Yeah. So what else I'm going to change over to my last question. Is there anything else you want people to understand about, like, you're going to do multiples of these. You guys see the horizon line being multiple years, it sounds like. Tell me more, just that little bit more I need to know.
I'll say this, is a lot of folks that do what we do, there's a certain bit of faith involved. I'm not using faith. I'm using fact. And what do I mean by that? Well, people invest all over the country. I know people that raise money, do deals. half the way across the country from where they are. Nothing wrong with that. I've done it myself. I owned apartment buildings, garden style in Memphis, Tennessee, for years. And, but they didn't really understand the market. And frankly, I'm guilty of that too. I didn't understand the market until I owned a piece of it back then. Now I immersed myself in the market. I understand what the mayor thinks, why they think it, what the Chamber of Commerce thinks, what the tenants, the bartenders. I know I have spent all this time here on the street and walking the streets, having dinner, having happy hour, attending the events, the whole 9 yards. So I immersed myself in the culture, and it's a small town. It's 26,000 people. And that's the difference, is that this is not, we'll see if it works. This is oh, I wish I was allowed, if the SEC would allow me to say guarantee, but they don't.
You can't. No, you can't. That's right. No saying that.
Yeah, exactly. There's no such thing as a guarantee, but we've done more due diligence, I feel, than any other deal I personally have looked at in the last decade. I think we are deeper in the market, have a better understanding of the market than any deal I've looked at in a decade, hands down.
I love you described it as faith, because I never would have said that, but that's true. I've owned in multiple different states, as we talked about, earlier. I've in Texas, I've owned in Knoxville, Tennessee, I've owned in Oregon, I've owned in Hawaii. So I've owned in multiple different states. And you're right. I buy a property. I'm like, oh yeah, of course I can work this out. And it is absolutely an act of faith. Right. You're completely correct. Yep. That's especially like when I bought in Hawaii. It was like I was trying to figure out how to it had to do with insurance, and it was car insurance that I was actually dealing with, but it had to do with insurance, and the car insurance was my big learning curve, because it was like I wanted to just renew my car insurance for the car I had in Hawaii, and they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, but you need to come on in," and I'm like, "What? No, we have to see the car before we." I'm like, "Wait a minute, you need to see my car before you'll renew the insurance on it." "Yeah, you could just stop on by anytime. We've got our adjusters here all day long. Not a problem. Stop on by, honey." And I'm like, I live in California. I can't stop on by any old time. I have to get on a plane, drive my car in, and go, "Hi, I'm your neighbor." Right. And my husband's like, "Yeah, you totally don't get it." That is, he grew up in Rock Island, Illinois. He grew up in a neighborhood where people saw each other face to face, eyeball to eyeball. That's how business was done. He's like, right. You totally don't understand the culture. And I'm like, you're right. I totally don't understand the culture, because he had to describe it to me in detail, how I could renew my car insurance when I was out of state.
Exactly.
Right? So you're talking about that sense of like, that is faith. You're right. It's faith. And then when you learn how it actually works, then you're helping to ensure its success. And that's what you're describing.
Yeah. And I can say, honestly, this is not the market that you're going to be able to successful sitting in Indiana trying to buy something remotely, because number one, they don't even want to talk to you. If you're not from here, if they can't see you and meet you at sunset over at Mallory Square, then forget it. The sellers won't even talk. They don't want the outsiders, so to speak. Right. I had to come
in and mess up their city.
Oh yeah. I had 6 months of pain where no one would talk to me.
They don't want us mainlanders coming in and messing up their whole,
that's right.
Their
Howleys, right?
I tried to not say it, but yes, absolutely. Howleys is what we're called. It's what I was called. I was absolutely a Howley, completely guilty.
Yeah.
Completely guilty. I was a Howley, and I was, guilty of Howley mistakes. Absolutely. And yes, they don't want you coming in and messing up their culture. Right? They're a beautiful part of the world. They're a piece of paradise, and they don't want you messing it up.
That's right.
That's right.
That's the way it is here. So,
got it.
Hey, but it works.
Financial, last question, and then I want your information if people want to get a hold of you. Financial freedom. Clearly, you've hit financial freedom. You described that as part of your story. What does financial freedom mean to you? Because that is why most people invest in real estate, is because they're looking someday for the freedom that having passive income or near passive income can give them. What does it mean to you?
For me, it meant the first month that all the bills got paid and I forgot to pay them, and nothing bounced. I did no work that month. The money came in all on its own. The bills auto debit, and there was still a decent amount of money left over. Granted, at the time I wanted more, and we worked on that later.
Right. Yeah. No, but there is tiers to financial freedom. In case anybody hasn't told the world this, there are tiers to financial freedom. There's the first one, which you're describing perfectly, is you can pay everything.
And I got to tell you, the epiphany, once you realize that you don't have to duplicate what you gross right now as an employee, you have to duplicate what you net. And my net and my gross were huge differences. I used to work for the federal government on ships at sea. I was well into the six figures and appropriately taxed. You don't get a break just because you work for the government.
Oh, yes, you are.
Yeah. So I was focused on, I'll never be able to retire. And that was after the crash and all that. But I thought I'd never be able to retire because I got to make a couple $100,000 a year to be able to retire. It's like, no, how much did I net? And it's like, oh, well, there's a number I can actually make. Yeah. I can do that.
Yeah. And your tax rate is very different as a professional real estate investor. There actually is a different tax rate. I was talking about, with a client, because I'm a real estate investment advisor. So I work with people on crafting their portfolio in order to reach their financial freedom goals. Right. And so I'm working with this couple right now, and we're talking about how their effective tax rate right now is over 50%. And I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for you. I know. Right. And there's and I'm like, well, I can't through intentional, thoughtful real estate investing. When you stop having the W-2 and you are a professional real estate investor, potentially we could get your effective tax rate to be as low as 20%, maybe even 10, although I can't promise 10, but the effective tax rate. Right. Because the effective tax rate is you've got your organizations, you've got your entities that are holding things, and those may or may not bleed through right to your SK1s through into your personal returns, and have your actual tax rate on your returns be 10 to 20%. It's like, well, that's cool. Like you can do that intentionally in real estate. And so if you're trying to, like you said, you don't want to try to replace your gross, you want to replace what you need to live on. That is your first cornerstone to financial freedom, because from there, you have perfect freedom to build.
Yes.
From there, you can say, yeah, I'm ready for the next step, baby. I'm ready for retirement income. I'm ready for, whatever it is that is your next step, your next driver.
That's right.
Okay. People want to get a hold of you, Tyler Sheff. How do they do that? What's your contact information? What's your smoke signals? What is it they need to do to get a hold of you?
I'm on all the social media channels. The best way to get to me, though, to get directly to me is through the website, cashflowguys.com. All my details are on their phone number, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, although I haven't logged in Twitter in a long time. Is that terrible of me?
Yeah, it is terrible of you, but I agree. I haven't logged into Instagram in a long time. I thank goodness I'm not responsible for logging into all those things, because otherwise
me either.
It would not
no
go
interest.
Well. Yeah, no interest in that.
I like books.
Yes, I understand. So Cashflow Guys, so lots of social media platforms, but they can go to your website right here.
Yep.
And you have a coaching program.
I do. So I have a private coaching program. I'm currently not taking on any students, but there is an option there to get on the waiting list if I do open it back up again. I've got 2 courses in there. One is a crash course on how to raise money, teach you how to raise private capital for under $100. And then the mailbox money system is my complete course, and I'm even offering that for less than $800 to give people the whole roadmap, the things you need to think about, picking your asset classes, the whole 9 yards. It's not a get rich quick. That's not what it's about. It's a journey. And that's where we're at.
You've got a podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Lily, Cashflow Guys is the name of your podcast.
And this episode will be there under guest appearances here soon.
Oh, yay. I love that. Thank you. That's lovely. It's nice. It's nice to have it given back both directions. Thank you. Just lovely. So, and then there's contact Tyler right here.
Yep. Contact Tyler. That sends the messages directly to us, and off you go.
And off you go. Yeah. And if they wanted to contact you, info@cashflowguys.com works as an email?
That is correct. And then, of course, the 305 number down there at the bottom.
Oh, well, let's give that out. So 305-222-7081, 305-222-7081. Is that your cell phone or your business line?
That goes to a business line.
Okay. I do sometimes give up my cell phone. So there you go. All right. Tyler, thank you so much for being on the show. So appreciate it. This is Christina Suter with a real estate breakthrough. Excuse me, and a cold. We are, of course, on Roku TV, iTunes, YouTube. You can find us there. Don't forget to look up also FIBI Pasadena. We have over 3 years worth of meetings, videos of our real estate meetings for free available. I have said this to you guys all the time. Your education and your network are truly your keys to success. It is not necessarily the cash you start with. So do not use that as an excuse. There is no reason for you to wait till you're rich to start getting your financial freedom created today. This is Christina Suter.